Hello everyone and welcome to Corporate Cafe, the podcast where we invite you to sit back, stick the kettle on and join us in conversation with successful entrepreneurs. I'm James and today on our first ever show we have the Managing Director of the award-winning business Editor's Keys, Mark Brown, to talk about how he got his business up and running and to get some tips on setting up a business based on his personal experiences in the industry. So hello Mark, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Hey James, thanks so much for having me. Really good to join you on the podcast.
Now, before we get started, I have to ask, as you are in the corporate cafe, what's your drink order?
Oh, it's got to be a nice flat white, just a little bit of milk, nice punchy espresso. Really gets me started for the day.
Ooh, a flat white? I'm a fan of a flat white myself, actually. But today I've gone for a chamomile tea, personally. I thought, it's the first podcast. I should probably have something quite soothing on the throat. So I put a bit of lemon and honey in there too, to make sure that I'm in the best shape possible to have a very interesting conversation with you, Mark. And just to quickly clarify for our audience as well, the Corporate Cafe is a virtual cafe. Currently following government guidelines regarding social distancing in light of the coronavirus pandemic, I'm currently sat in my makeshift home office recording this podcast over Zoom with Mark. So as much as I would love to be taking his coffee order physically right now, we will instead be having a virtual brew together. So let's get right to it, Mark. If you could just tell us a bit more about who you are and what your business is.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Brown and I'm the company director of a company called Editor's Keys. And we essentially produce a range of shortcut color-coded keyboards that are designed for video editors, for anyone who's anything from a YouTube creator to a BBC or ITV television editor. And then we also have a range of recording gear as well. So we make a small selection of USB microphones and portable vocal booths and things like that help create content.
And how long have you been running Editor's Keys now then? When did the business start?
So it originally started in about 2005 and it actually started as a little bit of a side hustle. I used to be a freelance floor manager for ITV, so I used to work on some of the talk shows like Trisha and Jerry Springer and Jeremy Kyle. But because it was a freelance job, you had like big periods where you didn't have any work. So I started, Editor's Keys really as just a sideline project to earn just a few pounds extra to sort of supplement my main income, really.
Oh, so it's been going for around 16 years now?
Yeah, and I mean, I say 2005, but I would probably say, because it started as a side hustle, there was a good 5 or 6 years where it was literally just a sideline thing. So in my own mind, I officially kind of started it around 2012, something like that. That's when I started to take it much more seriously and really develop the products. But it was kind of nice having those early years in there just to kind of experiment. And because I had another job, I didn't have to worry too much if we had a bad sales month and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, 16 years, long time. It's really flown by.
Yeah, it sounds good that you had the safety blanket of having another job alongside setting up the business. I think for many people, there's a huge concern in terms of income when they're initially setting up a business because so much is being invested into the business. There's a lot of risk, but potentially not much reward. So having another job alongside, I imagine, was a great way to ensure a steady income to pay your bills and look after yourself whilst also investing in the new business. And with Editor's Keys in particular, where did the actual idea for the business come from?
So it came from this kind of concept where I was doing video production and editing at university, and I left university. I kind of dropped out after the first year, and I started my own mini production company just doing videos for businesses and things. And I'd saved up for a really expensive computer. I'd bought the speakers and a CD writer and stuff at the time, which were all pretty expensive. And the last thing I wanted was a color-coded keyboard, and I'd seen them in a big ITV edit suite. But I didn't know at the time, but they were about £300 or £400 to buy. So they were pretty expensive bits of kit. And I just thought, I really want one, to really make my little home studio look like the business. But there was just no way I could afford one. So I just thought there's got to be a way that you can transform the keyboard that you already owned into one of these keyboards. And I looked around and there was just nothing online. So I sat down with a friend and we essentially designed these little tiny plastic veneers or like sticker sets that you can put on your own keyboard. And initially we just did that because I wanted one. We designed the first one for myself. We put about £100 in to start the business. And I genuinely wasn't looking at it to start a business. I thought I'll do this because it's cheaper than me buying the whole keyboard. And then I'll just flog the rest on eBay and hopefully get my money back. And when we put them on eBay, we originally had one for Photoshop and a video editing program called Adobe Premiere. They actually sold out really quickly within the first few weeks. So it was that first few sales that we got from eBay that made us think, well, hang on, maybe this is like a little business we can do. We started getting requests for other programs and other pieces of software. So yeah, it all started from a little eBay store.
Okay, so the niche idea came from your time working in the studios and thinking, well, I kind of want that keyboard for myself, actually. And then being able to translate that from one thought process in your head into something that actually had quite a bit of demand. And you were saying that the ones currently on the market were around £300 to £400 at the time. So what was the price point that you were initially offering yours out at?
Well, yeah, because they were a sticker set, it was originally £6.99.
Okay.
£6.99. So a huge difference. And I think that was the great thing with the products. If you were like me, at the time, I was a skint student, I had less than zero money. I was always in my overdraft. There was just no way I was going to spend that £400, £300 or £400 on a keyboard. So having these sticker sets for £6.99 was kind of like a no-brainer, really. You could try them out, and if it didn't work on your cheap keyboard, you could always go and buy one of these more expensive ones. But we actually found a few of our first orders were for the BBC and places like that. So they did really well. I mean, we had a lot of problems to start with, and I could probably go into this in a bit more detail in a bit, but the first set of stickers we did all faded within 3 months, and people were left with this sort of gooey mess on their keyboard. So we had a lot of production problems to start with, but it's kind of all good, all the good learning curve, and kind of gave me the practice of customer service and everything right from the get-go.
That's the one thing that I get terrified about when considering setting up a business, because I personally am such a perfectionist. I'm not a fan of the idea of learning on a job, but in terms of being a business owner, I guess you really do have to learn on the job, don't you? And you need to let those mistakes happen, I assume, so you can learn from them, and that will only make the business better and make you better at doing what you do. So following on from that, what sort of problems did you face throughout the life of your business, and how did you manage to overcome them?
Yeah, we started off with sticker sets, and now we make full dedicated keyboards, and we've had sort of contracts with Apple to get their keyboards from them before they finish them. But initially it was literally just this little plastic sticker set, and we've shopped around trying to find the best supplier for it. And one of the first suppliers was a company that made stickers that go on the side of vans and lorries. So we thought, well, these are going to be great because they don't fade in the sun. They can go through car washes and all sorts of stuff. So we got these sticker sets made through that kind of process. And then, 3 months in, we started getting emails from customers saying, look, I've just bought one of your sticker sets and all of the icons and colors have faded off and it's just a sticky mess. And we found out through a bit more testing that even though it could handle soap and car wash fluid and high pressure water, it couldn't handle human sweat. It would break down this kind of top layer of the inks. And we had this problem. So we had probably like 100 customers at the time. So we had to replace all of their sticker sets with brand new ones, which was at our cost. And then the second set as well, 3 months later, again, faded. It was another similar problem, but it was to do with heat this time. So the first 2 batches just failed. But what we did do is look after the customer, replace them twice. Luckily, all the customers stuck by us and they understood that we were kind of a new business, and we phoned each customer up, spoke to them about it, and just said, look, we'll keep replacing these until we get it right. And luckily, the third sort of sticker set was right. We added these kind of protection layers on top. But it kind of gave me my first experience of what can happen if maybe you don't test things enough, or if you don't get the right advice or customer feedback on places like eBay. So yeah, it was a good little challenge. And I'm in a way glad it happened early on, because I think it's much harder if you're further down the road and you get these problems. It was kind of good that it happened right near the start.
Yeah, and I guess that half of the business is actually the product that you're releasing, and the other half is the brand image. So when you've got customers saying that they have issues with the product, you've got to make sure that you're keeping the customer satisfaction high, because it's the thing that you should do in the business anyway. But it also helps you ensure that the brand image is being kept in high regard and maintains brand loyalty with your customers. So how would you say that plays into your business at the moment? What are you doing in terms of your brand image, and how would you say that actually influences the way that you're able to connect with your customers?
Yeah, I think it's a real big part of the business, the brand image. And I think when we started in 2005, we started really before there was YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all those kind of things. So if you messed up, really, you probably could have hidden and just not refunded customers. And this happened a lot in those days. Companies would just care about getting the new customer because there was nowhere really you could write reviews. This day and age, you really have to show that you care, because in a second, someone can put up a bad review. And if you're a new business and something like Trustpilot is there, if you've only got 2 reviews and one is bad, you suddenly look like 50% of your customers are really peed off. So you've really got to take it to the next level, really care about your customers, which you should be doing anyway. But I think it's actually a great thing to look after your customers and actually sort of join them in part of the community. One thing we've been doing is really getting back into creating YouTube content, and that's really helped. So we had this channel since about 2008, and we just had it there to put adverts and videos on. And it was used more of a holding place for ads. And about just over a year and a half ago, we really started to sit back and say, well, look, what kind of things are our customers into? What things can we help them with so we can actually be part of their community? Because we sell these keyboards that are for video editors. But other than that, we don't really sell much other stuff. So can we maybe teach them how to video edit a bit better? Can we teach them maybe some solutions to some problems they have? So we rejigged the YouTube channel. We're nearly on 100,000 subscribers now. And it's really, really helped the brand, I think, the customer loyalty, because we have people coming back on a weekly basis to learn more about video editing and content creation and all that kind of stuff. So I would really recommend it to people. If you are going to start a business, really think about your social media, think about the videos and things like this, podcasts, because it really does help your brand. It shows you as a person. There's nothing to hide behind. So people can see if you're honest or not, which I think is good. And even though it's time consuming, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy to do this kind of stuff, it pays dividends in the end, because you just get such a loyal customer base or a future customer base. Even if someone's not thinking of buying from you right now, you putting out all of the value and content out there really sets a great bed for them to come and pick up from you in the future when they are ready.
What you've just said reminds me of this TED Talk that I've watched once, actually, by Simon Sinek. In it, he talks about how the most successful companies don't just focus on what the product is, but pay particular attention to letting consumers know why they should buy their brand. And that comes through the brand ethos, which can be created and maintained through the brand's image. I'll look at including a link so everyone listening can watch that video instead of me trying to explain it in this incredibly poor way. But back onto editor's keys now. It sounds like you've been through a very interesting transition point where you started the business just before social media became a huge thing and as integral in business as it is today. But as you were just saying, your YouTube channel is now almost on 100,000 subscribers, which is amazing. So would you say that you've noticed a correlation between the growth of your social media platforms and the sales that your company's been making?
Yeah, 100%. I think in the early days you don't, and it's very, very, very slow process. I think you have this vision that you'll put up 3 videos and one will go viral. So you definitely have to be in it for the long term. And my advice would be is to try and create that kind of Netflix effect where you have a playlist of videos that are all about a niche or a kind of set of lessons maybe, because then you get people who will watch one and then they'll stick around for the 5 other videos that you might have on the same subject. But yeah, it really does help. We get people who come onto YouTube and try and really find a solution to their problem. And I think that's what a lot of listeners should think about, is that YouTube is not really it's not a Netflix or a BBC iPlayer. It's a search engine, and people go to that search engine with a question and they're looking for that answer. So by providing an answer to a problem, you're helping them find a problem. So in our case, it might be how to do something better in Photoshop or how to record something on your camera. We give them that answer, and you don't have to sell on the video, but if they see your branding and they see your links in your description and they see you 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, they're really going to start to trust you because you're the person that's helped them out time and time again. So we've seen that a lot. We get a lot of calls from people who are like, oh, hey, we've just been watching your channel for the last sort of 2 or 3 months, and I just thought I'd get one of your keyboards. I always see it in your videos. And so, we don't really try and sell in any of the videos, really. We might mention it if it's in shot and that kind of thing, but we really don't push it hard. And yeah, it's a definite link to sales. We can see it in our Shopify's back end that a lot of our sales come from YouTube, and that could be from other creators too. As well, I think it helps you stand up in the community that you're in too. So when we're trying to reach out to maybe other creators or influencers, they may have seen our videos, or we can at least send them to them so they know we're kind of a legitimate company. We're not trying to scam people and push something that really doesn't do its job, So I think in all areas it really can help your business, help your personal brand, all of that kind of stuff. And it's what I love about it. It's free to do it. There's no cost apart from your time and the equipment. There's no sort of price to launch a podcast or get your video onto YouTube. You can record on your phone, you can upload it, and the next day you may have some viewers and potentially a customer or 2.
Yeah, it's like doing a passion project, but being able to relate that to your business. But in terms of your YouTube channel, I've actually seen a few of your videos on YouTube, and I remember one video that you'd released with a package of all of these whoosh and swoop sound effects for people to download for free and use on their own videos. And I loved that because Editor's Keys doesn't even sell anything like that. It's not what the business side of the company is about, but that's about the community side of it and the branding for the company, like with the Photoshop tutorials that you've done too. And that's the interesting part, because it's not something that I would have ever really considered a business would have to pay attention to, but all of these things that aren't necessarily related to what a business sells but can help their community in similar ways really does pay off for the business, because it shows that you care about your community and it doesn't cost you anything to do that. And what you said about how it's not even really promoting your business, promoting what your business is actually selling or advertising any of your products, but it comes back to building on your community by showing what Editor's Keys does and how they can help their audience. I'm just going to backtrack slightly now though, because I remember you saying that you were the floor manager for ITV before setting up the business. So I'm assuming that you didn't have much of a business background before this, did you?
No, not really. So I come from a place called Great Yarmouth, which is like a seaside town. So not really business experience, but I would sort of just be working in a burger van, or I worked for a sort of travel company. And I always tried to work as hard as I could. And even when I was younger, I mean, they called it a managerial role, but I think it was just so they could leave me alone to run things, while they were doing other things. But even little things I had there helped me in a way, because I worked for like a travel firm, and he would let me kind of lock up and let people in. And so I kind of enjoyed the parts of business, and it picked up little, I guess, sort of not tips and tricks, but kind of just the way a business runs in the real world, sort of just getting to know the owners of the businesses I worked for. And luckily, I kind of worked very closely with every company I seemed to work for. They were always fairly small companies, so I worked very closely with the managing director or the owners and that kind of stuff. And I think doing that and just going out with them for coffees or a beer, you learn that actually business isn't so hard. It's just a lot of constant learning and constant trying to get advice. So yeah, no business background at all really, but just kind of learning from other people and asking a ton of questions. And that's something I'd say, don't be afraid to ask questions, because none of us really are born with all the answers. So and you can feel stupid sometimes asking a question that you think in your mind sounds really stupid, but really it's the only way you can learn, and it's the best thing you can do, really. I ask you stupid questions all the time.
Well, that's what got you where you are now with your business. Sometimes you have to just allow yourself to be more vulnerable with people. Don't be afraid of reaching out to people who could help you. Learn to ask all of those questions, and from there you'll get all of the answers. And in doing that, you'll be able to start progressing with your company and watch it become bigger and more successful, because Editor's Keys is now a limited company. But I imagine when you first started out, it was just a small business back in 2005. So what was the transition process like, and how many years into the business did that actually happen?
Yeah, so when we initially set up, because we were just selling a few things on eBay, initially it was just like a PayPal account, and a few £100 would come in, and that was that. But as sales started to increase, we thought actually, I think it was only 21, 22 at the time, but we thought we better actually set this up as a business, because we'll end up in tax problems if we don't. So yeah, we set up as a limited company very early on, but because we both weren't really we set up, me and a friend set it up, and we had side jobs. We weren't really concentrating on as a business. We were just sort of producing a few sticker sets here and there. So our tax bills and our accountancy fees were quite low, really. But yeah, we set up as a limited company straight away. But for me, I think that actually helped doing it very slowly, because as I said earlier on, there are a lot of things to learn when it comes to setting up a limited company. But at the same time, everything that happens step by step. You can set up the limited company, you can start processing payments through something like PayPal if you want to get started at the easiest way possible, and then there's much better, cheaper ways to take payments. But all of those things come, I think, as you progress. There's little mini steps you can take all along the way, and things are constantly changing as well. We're constantly changing the back-end software we're using, the payment processes we use, the shipping companies, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's constantly evolving.
And all of those changes are coming with a lot of research, I'm assuming. So how are you going about that research? Where are you finding this information to ensure that you're making the right decisions for the business?
These days, Luckily, I know a few other people who have businesses. I've got a very good accountant now. I mean, early on for us, it was quite hard because, as I say, there wasn't any YouTube or anything. We had dial-up internet, when we first started. So everything we learned was really from books or maybe speaking to someone else who had a limited company. But it was quite hard to find information actually in those days. But these days, I think there's so many good outlets, podcasts I'd recommend. You can just have that on while you're driving to work or commuting to work, going for a run. There's some great YouTube channels. Even the government's website, it's a bit messy, but they're so much better than they used to be. They have calculators on there. They have just questions that you can tick yes or no to, and it kind of gives you your answer. So, yeah, definitely check out the government's website. Definitely ask for advice from people. There's that phrase, fake it till you make it. But I think even with that, you don't want to fake it too much. There's a kind of time for confidence and sort of a bit of bravado, but you also want to make sure you're constantly asking the right questions. So I would definitely say get advice from people, even YouTubers and podcasts like this. Don't be afraid to leave a comment on this podcast or a YouTube channel you see, because you'll find that people are doing these kind of things actually love interacting with the people they're putting these videos and podcasts out for.
Oh, definitely. If anybody wanted to interact with us by dropping us a comment from this podcast or communicating with us on any of our socials, we'd be more than happy to assist. The reason that we're doing this podcast in the first place is to try and break down those walls that people put up with business and help contextualize it more. So of course, if you want to communicate with us in any way, you can definitely do that. And I love the sound of my own voice, so of course I'm going to talk to you guys about it. Obviously, with running a business, you have to constantly evolve and adapt to stay relevant in the market and appeal to more people. You were saying how initially you started off with the stickers and then eventually made the move to the actual keyboards, which, was always your intention. But I know that Editor's Keys now does even more than that. For example, you're selling audio equipment now as well. And I was wondering if you could just tell me how much of that was actually planned and how much is based on customer demand and keeping up with your consumers.
Yeah, so initially, it was just the sticker sets, and we always had a plan really from fairly early on to eventually do a keyboard, because they were just so expensive. And we knew that if you went to PC World, you could buy a keyboard for £20. We knew there was probably a fine balance in the middle to produce a keyboard eventually and at least make it half the price of what the competitor was selling it for. So yeah, so we invested every penny that we had back into the business, and like I say, we were both working for other companies, so we had an income coming in. We were lucky in that sense, and that's the great thing. If you are younger, you have a lot less expenses. I lived at my parents' house. I didn't have a car at the time. All these sort of things. As you get older, you might have sort of things that are a bit more dependent on your wage. So yeah, we invested back in, and I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years until we went to get our first keyboard made. And that was quite a challenge because we were working with suppliers in China. Up until that point, all suppliers had been in the UK, and we could go visit them and speak to them every day on the phone. So it was a little bit of a challenge, to find a keyboard company. And then you find out when you deal with a lot of Chinese firms that there's like 50 middlemen between you and the actual factory that you want to get hold of. But every person tells you they're the factory, and all these kind of strange things that you're not used to. But yeah, a lot of it, to be honest, came from customer demand. So we would be producing the keyboards, and more comments would come back. As the website became kind of more spidered by Google, people would find the site and say, oh, have you got a keyboard for this program? And we would just kind of keep a to-do list of requests, really. If we got 20 requests for a keyboard, we thought maybe it's a good time to start designing that one. And then the recording gear, because we had a lot of video editing keyboards, we were dealing with a lot of video editors, and it's strange, but video people aren't really that into audio, and audio people aren't really that into video. And at the time, you couldn't really get any USB microphones. There was one USB microphone that we would just say to people, oh, you could use this with Adobe Premiere or Final Cut. But we would get a lot of feedback, and it would be, oh, you just recommended this microphone and it's rubbish, it's distorted, or it's hissing and it's not very good. So we thought at that time, maybe we should make a really, really, really simple to use but broadcast grade USB microphone. So I spoke to someone at the BBC and just said, like, what are the specs that you need for it to be kind of broadcast worthy? So we had that written down, and then we went to a supplier, and it was kind of in about 2008. It was like when one of the big recessions was hitting. So we emailed all of these companies that made microphones for advice and said, could you do these kind of like a short production run? And every email we got back was, no, you need to order 10,000 units. We don't deal with small companies. And then the recession hit. And then luckily, kind of for us, we started to get emails and it was like, we might be able to do some low runs of this microphone for you now and we can help you out. So it kind of benefited us that I guess a lot of these big microphone manufacturers were going out of business or they were kind of struggling to get orders. So we had one and they'd worked with companies like Sony and stuff before. And they helped us kind of build this microphone and it was called the SL150, which we still do today, like a version of it. And it was just literally a broadcast grade mic that you can plug into a USB port, no buttons or settings, just you plug it in, select it and away you go. And I mean, now of course, there's quite a lot of USB microphones out there, but at the time, there was probably 3 or 4 USB mics that would work at a broadcast level. So yeah, all kind of, it's always been investing back in and back in and back in at every point, to be honest.
And it's that investing into the business that helps the business evolve and reach more people. So as long as you're investing in the right ways that you believe in, then you'll hopefully see that money coming back through custom. You keep on talking about these suppliers though, like those Chinese suppliers that you found to produce the microphones for you. Is that something that you did personally, or did you have people working for you who did it for you? And if you did do it personally, how did you go about actually sourcing these suppliers? Like, where were you looking to source these?
Yeah, so we did it personally. We just stayed up for nights on end. We had a little office in Norwich at the time, and we would kind of be doing Editor's Keys more full time. We had a small office that we rented in Norwich, and I was doing bits of freelance here and there, but it was only like 1 or 2 days a week. So we were taking it much more serious. So we would just kind of do our day-to-day work, and then from about 6 p.m. to like 2 a.m, we would just get a kebab or something, sit in the office and just trail through all the websites and sort of suppliers. So we just emailed hundreds of possible suppliers and then tried to work our way down to the best ones. We had to pay for a lot of samples, so that's one thing I would definitely recommend. Just make sure you get a sample. It's surprising actually how many people put a product into production, they've not even received a sample, or they've received a completely different product from that company and never tested out the one that they eventually get. So yeah, we got some samples, we did some test recordings, we had to go back 2 or 3 times. We found that our first supplier that we had a big problem where we'd got the spec done and the weight of the microphone and everything was lovely. And then when we actually got it delivered, it was not like the product we'd agreed to and stuff. And you find that, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be, but you would find that where once you've paid for the production, things change and they're like, oh, well, we thought you might prefer this material instead of this. And it's really just a way of them saving sort of money. But one thing I'd recommend, if you are dealing with a supplier overseas, there are a lot of good suppliers now, but you can get inspectors that will go in and before your products ship, they will spot check sort of, if you order, say, 100 master cartons, they'll spot check 10 of those, take them out, try a product out, test it, send you all that sort of stuff. And I'd recommend doing that because we've been hit a few times with especially new suppliers that change things up or change a chip inside a microphone, that kind of thing. So that's really good. It does cost a little bit of money, but I think when you're getting to the level where you're ordering a container load of products, the last thing you want is a container load of products that you can't sell or they're not as good as you once thought. So yeah, we did it all manually. There are sites like Alibaba and even AliExpress and sites that are really easy to use. But again, you do have to look out for that supplier of a supplier of a supplier issue where you're not getting it from the main supplier. So it is hard to do diligence. If we were out of COVID, you can actually visit a lot of trade shows in places like China and India and things. Places that it's actually good to walk around these huge trade shows. Obviously, it'll cost you a little bit to get there, but you can actually meet the suppliers. You can see what they're selling on their stands, and that's a great way of finding a good supplier before you go all in.
I hadn't even thought about asking for samples at the beginning before paying these suppliers for their products. Like, it seems like something that would just be common sense. And I don't know whether it's just me having a dumb moment, but I don't know. I imagine that this is a practice that some people may not actually want to do because, you want to trust that these suppliers will deliver, So yeah, I don't know why I've never even thought about that. But getting the sample at the start, they'll always have to deliver on that sample. They can't just take your money and then do something else. But that perfectly segues into my next question, actually, because you mentioned about going to these trade shows internationally to view these products and meet the suppliers in a pre-COVID world, but obviously That's currently not possible, is it? So that's one way that the pandemic has changed the way that your business could work. But what are the other ways that COVID has affected your company? I know that Editors Keys is an online company, so in some ways you wouldn't have been directly affected, but I imagine that you've been hit by the pandemic in other ways. And how did you manage to get around that as a business?
So yeah, we had quite a strange situation really. When COVID first hit and it was looking like we were about to go into a lockdown, I think it's sort of February time, our sales just dropped off a cliff and we didn't have any sales for literally probably about a week or so, and I was really panicking. I was thinking, oh no. But of course, for us, you were now dealing with a situation where editors, well, everyone was working from home, so people needed more equipment. So we actually, after about a week, our sales just absolutely spiked and went through the roof. The problem for us is that we just didn't have enough products in, and all of our suppliers in China were shut down. All their factories were being cleaned, and they were on full lockdown for, I think it was about two or 3 months. And then that caused a backlog. So our main problem was we had this, fortunately for us, this sort of peak of sales, more sales than we'd ever had at a Christmas period or anything. We just didn't have the products, and we couldn't get any more products in for 3 months. So I think if we would have had this supply, had we known, and of course lots of people you just couldn't know, we would have had record sales probably of all time, but we couldn't get the products made. Then we couldn't get the products in. And then when we had the products made, we were hit with this shipment delay. All of the container ships that come from China to here were all fully booked, or the prices were tripling because everyone was so desperate to get their products from China or Asia. So that was a huge problem, and we had many months of just being out of stock. So we were doing things like pre-orders just to stay alive, really, so allowing people to kind of pay for an item but it will come in 30 days time, 60 days time. So we kind of weathered the storm, and I like to stay as positive as I can because there's so many businesses that have gone bankrupt or bust, and we weathered it fairly well. We had a good year. It's been tough sort of adjusting, sort of working from home, but everyone's had to face that. So I can't complain. And in some ways it's given me more time to venture into new things like doing podcasts or writing more YouTube scripts, things I didn't feel like I had a lot of time for before. I've now got an extra hour in the day where I would be driving to work into Manchester, and I can use that for something productive. So actually trying to take the little benefits you can out of these situations, I think, is really important, because it's very easy to dwell on I've got to work from home, I'm stuck at home, or the business is going to go down because we can't all be together. There are little opportunities that you can take. Then they may not be better than you had before, but I think try to use the new time that you have to maybe do something new, learn a new skill, or just have YouTube on in the background with something you're trying to learn. And I think it's a good positive step to get your business kind of moving in a newer direction.
So you suddenly had this big demand, but you were struggling to get the supply, which must have been tough. But being able to put some more time and effort into the business in other ways, like through your social profiles, would you say that doing that and taking control of the business in that way, which was the only way that you could at that point, actually paid off for the business in the long term?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think before it was easy to say, oh, we don't have enough time for this, we're busy, or you're then faced with a situation where you had the time and you didn't really have any excuses. We've got the internet at home. Sales were slowing down because of the kind of lack of stock we had. So I could have just sat there and done nothing. But I think, it's important to look at some of the new things and it has paid dividends. I've spent a lot more time doing the YouTube channel, and we've grown a lot quicker. I can see that we've grown quicker through that. You earn a little bit of YouTube revenue, to be honest, on your views too. So even though we're not necessarily selling in every video, you earn a little bit of a kickback from the ads that are placed around it. So even that helps pay. I have a full-time video editor here, and it helps pay his wage a bit. So there's little benefits that you can pull out of that. And we've gotten deeper with our community, and some of the influencers that we speak to, we've been on podcasts with them. And before lockdown, I don't think I'd probably done one podcast. Since lockdown last year, I've probably done 20 or 30 podcasts. So it's great. I've had more time for stuff like this. I really enjoy doing this, because we're an online business. You often don't see people for many months, just be me and the small team we've got here, but we don't see the customers. We don't really didn't have video calls with any influencers or anyone. Now, because everyone's at home, we're doing video calls, we're doing podcasts, and I quite enjoy it, to be honest. It's something new, which I wasn't doing before.
And it's the perfect time to, because we can't connect with people physically at the moment. So being able to put your presence out there virtually and telling your story is a great way to keep that engagement with your customers, because it really helps you to build a more personal relationship with them. And Editor's Keys has such an interesting story as well. I mean, the business has been through a pandemic and a recession and managed to survive both of them. So, on that note, seeing as you've been able to take charge of the business's successes so well, do you have any advice for people who are considering starting up their own business?
Yeah, so I would definitely say the first one is start right now. Don't put it off. Just start right now with even the basic stuff, like thinking about your logo, or your website or the software you want to use. If you start just processing this stuff, it really, really helps, and it gets you ready. And then you have that other free time to think about your products. But I would say start right now. Don't keep putting it off. It's so easy to think, oh, I'll do it when the kids are at school, or I'll do it when I quit my job, or I'll do it. There's always something that people need to do. It needs to happen before they start. And I think the key is start now. It's never, ever been easier to learn how to do something through podcasts and YouTube. And it's never been cheaper. The barrier to entry is so much cheaper. When we started a business, as I say, we were on dial-up internet. There was no YouTube or social media. The only way we could advertise our business was paying £600 for a half-page advert in a recording magazine that barely ever worked. Now we can start doing YouTube ads or Google ads for literally pennies. Or if you don't want to do that, you can start doing a podcast or a YouTube channel or writing a blog on Medium. Or there's so many things you can do for free that just take a little bit of your time that can really help you get going. And it's just never been easier, faster. There's never been as much advice out there to get started. And my kind of main piece of advice would be just don't stop asking questions. Ask those stupid questions that you feel that everyone else is going to look at you funny for. Like, how do I start a limited company? How do I deal with VAT? How do I make a website? These are all questions that no one initially knows an answer to, and they're not super complex answers. So you might be quite surprised how easy it is to record a YouTube video, how easy it is to start your first website. Look at something like Shopify or something like that, or get started on eBay, Etsy. There's so many good places to just get started. You can do the more complicated stuff as you go along, but ask questions, learn, and get started now.
And that's great advice. The time really is now. Stop putting those barriers up and start doing. You'll be learning along the way, but if you don't take those initial steps out of your comfort zone, then you'll never be able to reap those potential rewards. But of course, people have their reservations and concerns, which is understandable when it's their money at stake. But, you've gone into this with no business background and done it. But if you were able to go back and talk to your younger self when the business started, is there anything that you wish you knew then that you know now?
I think when I started, my big problem was I felt like I had to be good at everything. I had to be good at graphic design. I had to be good at the business. I had to be good at the customer care. I had to be good at the postage stuff. The truth is, you don't need to be good at all of those things. You need to be good at 2 or 3 things and try and either employ a freelancer or a company or a member of staff who can do something better than you. I'm okay at graphic design, but I realized as soon as I got a graphic designer in, I'm rubbish compared to them, and our products and our business is better for having them in than me sitting there all the time trying to be better at graphic design, because I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not an accountant. I hate doing accounts. So to begin with, I was trying to save £100 in a year by not having an accountant and doing it myself. But I hate doing accounts. It's like my worst thing. All of these things, I would say, don't try and be the master of everything. Just concentrate on what it is your passion is. Obviously, learn some skills around that. It's good to have a good idea of the concepts of everything. You want to understand everything, but don't be afraid to ask for help. I think it's a really good tip to ask a friend, ask a colleague, ask a business person or ask a business even for advice. Sometimes businesses don't necessarily want to sell you something straight away. They're happy to offer you a bit of advice, and you may realize you actually don't need what it is they're offering, or maybe you do, and it's going to really help you out. So just take each step as it comes and learn from other people, and don't be afraid to ask the questions and get the help in.
Yeah. Break down that stigmatism and speak to other people to get advice from them, because, they probably don't want you going through the same struggles that they went through when they were doing it. Like right now, you're providing us with all this insightful information based on your own experiences with the business up until this point. But in terms of the future, what have you actually got planned for Editor's Keys moving forward? Is there anything exciting for us to look out for?
So yeah, we're going to expand the kind of product range a little bit more. We're going to do obviously a few more keyboards and things. But one thing we want to do is get more into digital products based around the products that we create the keyboards for. So we do a lot of video editing keyboards and we do a lot of recording gear. So we want to start making digital products for those programs, because I think that's one issue with Editor's Keys, is that we sell you this lovely keyboard that lasts a long period of time, and we don't have that much other stuff we can even sell to a customer. So we kind of need to resolve that issue. You know, we want you to be coming back time and time again. So if we sell you an Apple Final Cut keyboard, which is a video editing piece of software, we then want to be able to sell you maybe some graphics that you can overlay onto your videos, or some sound effects, or some other things that will make your job easier and more enjoyable. And again, hopefully we can do a great job of that. So yeah, definitely digital products, and again, increasing kind of like our digital presence of YouTube and things like that to get even further out into the community.
That all sounds very exciting, Mark. I'm looking forward to seeing Editor's Keys continue to grow and the many more successes that the company makes in the future, as I'm sure our audience members are too. So where can people find Editor's Keys to keep up to date?
Yeah, so the website is editorskeys.com, or you can find us on all socials. We're normally Facebook/EditorsKeys, YouTube/EditorsKeys, and Twitter/EditorsKeys. So really easy to find on all of the socials. So if you want to learn anything about how to record or start making your own YouTube channel, we have a ton of tutorials for that on the YouTube channel too.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me on the show. You've been a great guest and provided us with some fascinating insight into business, so thank you so much for that. And thank you to the audience for joining us in the corporate cafe, but it's now coming up to closing time and everyone's got to head back to the office now. If you enjoyed the show today, then please give us a follow to keep up to date with all of our new episodes. And if you've got any friends, foes, or mutual acquaintances who are interested in the business world or wanting to set up their own companies, then share the podcast with them and get them to join our community too, because there's always a spare seat in the corporate cafe. Thank you all so much again for listening, and we'll see you next week when we're in conversation with another successful entrepreneur. But until then, it's goodbye for now.